No, and not only am I a doctor, I'm a freaking minister. That's right, I can marry people, Michael. I can marry people right now. You want to get married? You want to get gay married? We could do this. We could do this right now.
This will only work for Does it only work for gay marriage?
I mean, honestly,
does it only work for gay marriage? You have an only gay marriage certificate.
I've performed only 2 weddings, and both of them were gay marriages. So maybe.
So yes, yes, it is.
I mean, I haven't had any straight people ask me to marry them yet. So.
And I'll let you know when I get married. I'm not asking you.
It's all right. I know you don't want a non-denominational, vaguely pagan, weird wedding.
I super don't. I'm cool with non-denominational, vaguely pagan people being there.
It's most of your friends, Michael.
I know it is. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a totally different podcast, episode 7, where we go over the history and the cultural impact, which is what this episode is mostly focusing in on, of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
The current edition.
So where last we left off, my good friend Alex, who I love dearly, decided to convince me that 4th edition was a good edition. He didn't do that. He tried. He didn't convince me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he at least made me hate it slightly less.
Honestly, I'm just glad he had a good time with it.
Oh yeah.
That's what I care about. Is he clearly enjoyed himself the entire time? So hey, right on. Hey, if you want to like a bad system, great. But his argument kept coming back to, if the DM's good, you're fine.
That's any role-playing system.
Well, yes, but some role-play systems fix it a little bit more. And the way they fix it is they make it a little bit more idiot-proof. Now, a good DM, we didn't really talk about this in previous episodes, a good dungeon master, and I prescribe to the dungeon master camp, and I think you're kind of in that camp, is we're going to play Ravenloft soon. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it is. You're all going to die.
I'll live. A good dungeon master can make a game well-versed, and if they're familiar with the system, they have a much better time. Like, I remember my first time running D&D when I had to like open up the book versus like I'm casting a spell and I go, oh, I know what that does. It's really great when I'm running Modern Gods. I just got the trademark for that, by the way.
Neat.
Trademark is successful. We packed it in yesterday, so now we can talk about it.
I have to refresh mine, apparently. That's going to be expensive.
The Carnival one?
Yeah, it lapsed.
Yeah. So, but when I was running Modern Gods, again, a system that I made, I was like, people use this power. I'm like, that does this, and that does this, and that does, and it flowed a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why a lot of simple systems had that going for it, but you open up a book like 3.5, which I love dearly, and there's thousands of rules and special tables you have to go to. People are like, what's the chance, or AD&D, what's the chance of my character contracting an STD? Well, let's open up the page, and oh yes, here's the table. It's this percentage if you're an elf. That was a real table.
That's racist.
That was
totally was.
That was a real table in AD&D.
Yep. Our good friend Joe actually sent us the table like right after the 2nd edition episode.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, he posted it somewhere, but yeah.
Yeah. No. He posted the harlot table.
Oh yeah.
He posted the how to get a harlot. That's the table you use first, and then you use the STD table after that. So we are talking about 5th edition, which is regarded as like the savior of Dungeons & Dragons, and I don't actually disagree. 4th edition sales were incredibly low. Now Pathfinder was killing it.
Yeah, blew it out of the water.
Oh, by a mile. But it has also led to games like Shadowrun was taking off. We had games like
which Shadowrun? Hold on, clarify. Which Shadowrun? There's like 6.
I think people are still playing 2nd edition.
Okay.
Which I think is the good edition. 5th edition's okay.
I don't even remember. I played 1 edition of Shadowrun once. That was a D6 system that worked similar to the White Wolf D10 system, but that was like in the 90s. I don't even remember what that was.
Believe it or not, we got a request from a fan. We have those.
Ooh.
And my good friend Drew messaged us about possibly doing a Shadowrun episode. And I know very little about Shadowrun. I played it a couple times, but We might do that in the future. Shadowrun.
I would say maybe not Shadowrun, maybe just cyberpunk games in general.
Sure, but that's neither here nor there. Fifth edition.
Fifth edition
needs to compete with all these games. So how do you do it? Now, Alex was 100% right. Fourth edition was a game made by committee.
Mm-hmm.
Fifth edition hired a core group of writers to say, let's write fifth edition. And there was a lot of pressure on D&D at this time because their sales were lowering. They were losing access, so they said, we need to make this edition work. And we need to get it to as many people as we can. So the running title for fifth edition was called D&D Next. And it had 2 modules that it came with. One was like a temple run. That's the one I'm most familiar with. The other one was like a I think it was there was like a gladiatorial arena kind of thing going on. But the temple run was like your traditional dungeon crawl. And you had to like traverse the dungeon and get there. And it was written in a way that they wanted to make it as simple as possible. They would hand it to a DM, and they tested it by handing it to GMs who've never GM'd before. They'd be like, run this game. Here's a quick cursory of the rules. We want to see if we can write our modules in a way where any idiot can pick it up and say, can we run it? And after a few tweaking, they succeeded at this.
And finding some idiots, apparently. But no, that's actually a really, really good means test. Find the people that have the least competence in the job, and if they can perform the job, that means the system must be at least decent.
Oh, exactly. And we're also getting away from now. This is also the era of role-playing games starting to become more simple and simple. We see that by Pathfinder, which was a more simple version of 3.5.
Even though it still has the book bloat.
It does have the book bloat, but like the skills are condensed. Everything's condensed, and it's they realized what people wanted. Fourth edition, they said people want MMOs. Well, MMO gamers would pick up D&D and say, that was cool, but like I want to go hit something. I had a person in college once tell me, yeah, I'll play like D&D when VR catches up to it. I'm like,
what?
Good for you, dude, I guess. Whatever. But this is a real mentality, and video gamers play video games because they like video games. I think a lot of people play D&D, play video games, and they're different games. But
with that mentality, why didn't you drag him to a LARP or something?
Oh, he hated the LARP too. He was like, I don't want to pretend.
Okay.
Don't worry about this guy. We don't. I'm gonna call him that guy. I might bring him up a couple times. I have stories about that guy.
He's that guy.
So, 5th edition boils everything down even more. Now, instead of like numbers, so before in D&D you would get things like you flanking, you get a +2, or you did this, you get a +4, or you did this, you giving a -2 to the enemy. It would give you these static number boosts. And they said, well, hang on. People don't like that because they don't like doing math. How do we make this easy? So they got rid of all these numbers and they came up with a system called the advantage disadvantage system.
Yep.
Yeah, and what it was if I was doing something good and I had a benefit, I'd roll with advantage, which means I roll 2d20 and take the highest number. If I was doing something with poor situation, I roll 2d20, take the lowest number. Let's say my role player is really good in persuasion conversation, I can give you advantage. Role player is really bad, I might give you disadvantage. You're being flanked by guys who are trying to make the acrobatics check. Well, that sounds like a disadvantage to me. And in the book, it comes up with here are examples you can do for advantage, disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
And what 5th edition does is it boils everything down even more so. They explain how to do everything, and they make it so it's not like, oh, you can do other stuff. It says, here's what you can do. They know experienced dungeon masters are going to say, I don't like this rule, I'm throwing it out. And they can do that. But they wrote the rule book in a way that you can just run it and have no questions about what to do. And no better is that stated than grappling. Now, grappling was a system, and I start with grappling because I think it categorizes 5th edition above all. In previous Pathfinder, I remember the Pathfinder grappling system because I remember opening the book and going, and figuring it out. So you had a combat maneuver defense and a combat maneuver attack. This is to perform combat maneuvers like disarming or grappling or tripping somebody. And there was also flat-footed AC and normal AC. And flat-footed AC was like if I my AC not with my dexterity because you caught me flat-footed, right? You still got your armor because you were still a dude in like plate mail. Like guns worked against flat-footed AC because I was just like, bam! You can't dodge a gun because it's a gun. Ha! I got a gun, which made sense in my opinion. Like your armor might stop it, good for you, but man, I was punching right through. That's what flat-footed AC was. and you would roll your CMB, your CMA versus your CMD, and then you would get your armor class factored in on your flat-footed level, and then if you grappled, you could hold them for an action, and there
Yeah,
was
you lost me already. That's stupid.
get out of the situation. 5e takes grappling, and it's this. I roll athletics. You roll either acrobatics or athletics. Did I succeed? Your speed becomes 0, and you cannot benefit from any boost of speed. That's it. That's all grappling does. It prevents you from moving. I can still, while I'm grappled, stab you. I can still, while I'm grappled, do a thing over here. I can even cast a spell. That's okay. There's ways you could like interrupt that as certain classes.
Mm-hmm.
That's all grapple does. They simplified it even more. Frightened. Before it was like this whole thing of like every chance you make a roll, it's like, no, you're frightened, you can't move towards them, and when you're doing stuff against them, you have to roll. If you see them, you have to roll disadvantage. Easy. Easy. Poisoned. You have disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. You've been poisoned. Neato burrito. You've been stunned. You're temporarily incapacitated. Oh, what does incapacitate do? Well, you scroll up a little bit. You can't take actions or reactions. Cool. And everything was boiled down to these simple conditions. So we've already simplified conditions. No longer was it, oh, you get this, and oh, maybe you're this now. Oh, maybe you're this. No, none of that. We have advantage, we have disadvantage, and we have easy to understand systems.
But I bought skill tricks. No, I can totally appreciate the simplification as somebody that has played RPGs for 25, 30 years almost and has played just about every different system. The fact that grappling is simplified to just one roll. That's it.
One roll.
Yeah,
one roll.
just
and
one roll.
On your turn, I can attempt to break out of the grapple.
Mm-hmm.
That's also a thing. Every turn, I have a chance to wiggle my way out. Other things the game simplifies is skills. You have what's called a proficiency bonus.
Yeah, this is where I'm not happy.
We'll talk about our opinions after this, because I have opinions on skills.
Oh, I have opinions.
They have a system called your proficiency bonus. Mm-hmm. Each level, I think it's like every third level, you get a +1 to your proficiency bonus. If I'm a higher level, I think my proficiency bonuses are +2. Then it becomes a +3. Then it becomes a +4, +5. And I add this to most rolls. I load this to my attack roll. I add this to my DC when you're saving against my spells. I add this to my actual save, and I'm trying to save against your spells. I add this to if my abilities are proficient, great. But I have this proficiency number. My skills, when I make my character, it says pick a couple skills you're proficient in. What it does is, let's say I take sleight of hand. It's dexterity. So let's say my dexterity is a +4. Mm-hmm. I add my proficiency modifier, whatever my proficiency modifier is. Let's say it's a +4. Now I'm rolling a +8 when I roll a sleight of hand. Now, I can never up this again. When I create my character, done. Those are my proficiencies. And you get a background, too. This is another addition to character creation, which I love. You get a background. Maybe you were an acolyte in a temple, and it gives you like this cool flavor text ability, like, hey, most priests will take care of you. So you can go to your DM and be like, hey, I go to the church, and I'm an acolyte. Priests take care of me. And they're like, oh, cool. There was like Wayfinder, which is like, you can never be lost in the woods. It's like, oh, that sounds really cool. And it gave you 2 additional skills you were proficient in. It also gave you what's called tool proficiencies. So if I was doing things with like herbalism, I would take my nature, then I'd add my proficiency with my kit and add and roll advantage, and that's how I like make potions out of like herbs and such. And that's kind of how they handle the whole game. Now, classes were also simplified. They gave you the base classes, and they said, when you become this level, you learn this skill. When you become this level, you learn this skill. It was simple. In case you got feats, which are like cool things to add to your character, and you go into the book and you go, I want that feat. And or it's a feat, or you can up one of your ability scores. You have an option of the 2 things, which has always been the case. Because if you don't want to touch feats and you're like, that's too complicated, cool, I'll just put a +2 into my strength.
Ability scores, yep.
Whatever. The way you uniqueify your character is what's called subclasses. And these subclasses could be anything from my fighter could become a champion, which means I crit easier. Or my rogue can become an assassin, which means I can break the game. Or my druid can become a circle of the moon. I turn to animals better. And it is set skills that level up at certain levels.
It's very reminiscent of the 2nd edition like kits because I think like the initial like knee jerk is it's kind of like prestige classes, but it's not. It doesn't have as many benefits as the prestige classes generally come with, as many the level dependent abilities. It just adds just a little bit of flavor and a few like odds and ends of abilities that the character now has access to,
Yeah.
which I definitely dig. Because I don't like the complicatedness of a lot of like the later prestige classes for 3.5 and Pathfinder, but I always felt that the kits of second edition didn't really have enough to offer to make any of them really that cool.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think these subclasses, and that's what they're called officially,
Yeah.
they're subclasses, really just add a different level of play to the game. And as you level up, you pick your subclass, and once you picked it, it's great. But it's also cool is you can get multiple subclasses. You can get in the same class. So let's say I go 3 levels in Rogue, then I go 3 level in Warrior. I get 2 different subclasses. So that's when you get your mix and match. The way they handle multiclassing is you can do it.
Yeah.
That's
Which
it.
is great.
Go level up. Whatever. They made reasons to not multiclass, and it's better by the game to just blitz your tree unless you're playing a ranger. But if you're playing a ranger, why?
It's because you want to have animal friends, but you don't want to commit to being a druid because you're a loser.
That's right. You could also be a fighter with a bow. It's actually just better. People space it out, and it's like, I want to be a range character, be a fighter with a bow. it's better. And they made these classes very, very flavorful. The fighter's no longer this guy who sits there and goes, I fight. It's like, I can be a bow guy, I can be a knife guy, I can be a sword and shield guy, I can be a lot of things. Most popular racing class combination, human fighter still. By a massive margin. Elf Wizard is still number 2. But that is 5th edition. Now, what did it do culturally? Well, it brought D&D into a very mainstream audience because it was easy to understand. And D&D put a lot of effort into their open gaming license. They wanted to, before the game launched, they wanted as many third-party publishers to be ready to go out the gate with 5th edition. So they incentivized you to make 5th edition content. Hey, we'll give you some information. We'll drop you with the book. But they wanted a whole bunch of third-party info all there. And it's a group called the Dungeon Masters Guild, which was created by 5th edition. And you can go on there and you can see all this content. So if you want to find something unique, go ahead and look. And they also push the gaming stores. Gaming stores are now being incentivized to run 5th edition starting by saying, hey, come to the gaming store. And my gaming store had this. I actually ran a couple of these. You come to the gaming store. It usually would be a bunch of kids. It was marketed at kids, like 11, 12, 13. They'd come in, and they said, you have no information D&D? That's fine. We'll build you a character today. And we'll play a game today. And they had a very easy opening module about like killing goblin, a very traditional module. And they said, welcome to D&D. And then they ran weekly games after that. And what the intent was, you come with your friends of 6 people, right? You sign up for a low time slot. It's free. The gaming store, D&D will actually pay your gaming store to run these. And you come down, you sit down, and then you say, hey, if you kids want to play, who wants to be the dungeon master? And the GM will take them aside and teach them how to GM for a second. And they'll say, here's your game. They'll buy the game from the store. This is also great for the gaming store to make money. Oh, you want to play with your friends? You have to buy this book. You have to buy this dungeon master guide. You have to buy this monster manual. And
$120 later, hey.
$120 later, you're playing D&D and you're with your group of friends. And they taught, instead of like, come to the gaming store, I'll teach you 4th edition. It's like, no, I'll give you a quick rundown, teach you to build a character. Here you go. You can go now play with your friends. And so kids are getting into D&D. Now, I got into D&D as a kid, but I was like, I had to jump through a lot of hoops to get there. I was like, what does this do? What does this do? Why is there 9 schools of magic? No, everything, boom, simple. Simple. And that was the philosophy of 5th edition. Keep it simple.
Well, the thing is that was supposed to be the philosophy with 4th edition too, but they just screwed the pooch on it royally. Like, I remember when 4th first hit, I had a couple of friends running stuff at my friendly local gaming store. It was very much the same thing. They were trying to encourage kids to play. Like, my friend James, one of his groups, he had like a group of like 9-year-old girls that were playing, and they really loved playing D&D, but just fourth edition was such a headache for them. He ended up like midway through the campaign switching it back to 3.5 because it was just nobody liked it. But again, we're talking fifth edition here. I just wanted to bring up like this isn't the first time Wizards of the Coast has tried this marketing attempt. However, this is the first time it's succeeded. And boy,
Correct.
howdy, did it freaking succeed.
Oh yeah. I was looking at a graph today of Pathfinder versus D&D, and D&D has eclipsed every other role-playing game. World of Darkness dropped their 5th edition book. Boom. 5th edition buried it. The new Shadowrun came out a year and a half ago. 5th edition buried it. 5th edition is burying these new games if they're fighting on the same playing field they are. Now, we'll talk about in a future episode the countercultures. There's games like Powered by the Apocalypse or Savage Worlds, who
all the Powered by the Apocalypse, like all 20 of them.
Or Fate Core. Games that are focused on a different narrative style of game. D&D at its core is a game about my guys are going to fight something bad. And that is a D&D philosophy. It is a combat game. Now, there's role-play elements to this combat game, but at the end of the day, you end your party with fighting the big boss at the end. And that's not a bad thing. No. You want to kill the evil god. I want to kill the evil dragon. I want to kill the Death Knight. I want to kill the Lich.
Yep.
You set up a big bad evil guy, and the Dungeon Master's book is like, set up a big bad evil guy. Players gonna feel really good when that dude dies. Awesome! Whoa! Stop the presses. We figured it out. And that is, in a nutshell, the philosophy of D&D. Now, other games are more narrative heavy, where the focus is on, I want to tell a good story, and the rules are kind of cursory. They're kind of just here so we can tell the story.
Yeah, don't even get me started on one-page RPGs. Oh my God, how much I love Lasers and Feelings, dude, but that's a whole other topic right there.
Let's talk about one-page RPGs, because this is where me and you differ. I don't like one-page RPGs.
They're so freaking simple though. Like they're like with the one I mentioned before, Lasers and Feelings, which is meant to be a tongue-in-cheek mock-up of Star Trek. You have one stat. You pick a number between 2 and 5. You pick 2 through 5 as your number. That is your stat. If your stat is low, you have a higher laser score, which means you're good at more like physical things and physical things and scientific things. Whereas if you have a high score, if your number's higher, you have a high feelings score, which means you're good at stuff that's like more emotional or intuitive.
And you roll high or low, and it's I'm rolling under a certain number or above a certain number to succeed. I understand.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's such a fun, goofy thing. And there's a little sidebar where you roll like 5d6, and the 5d6, if you don't want to come up with your own plot, it has your whole plot laid out. Like Zargon the Conqueror has stolen the Space Queen in order to replicate cyborgs to conquer the universe. All right, cool. That's the plot for this game. We're going with it.
Yeah.
Where you do what I do and you watch like Star Trek TNG and like, hey, this is a good away team mission. This could be a good game of Lasers and Feelings right here.
I love one of my favorite RPGs of all time is Paranoia. Is one of my favorite RPGs. I will do a whole episode on that. I love Paranoia. That is one of my favorites. Maybe we should just stream
a game of that.
I would love to stream Paranoia. That game is class. Oh, I love that game. But it's in the same vein. Make games simple. Now, D&D never lost their complexity though. D&D is still a complicated game. It just happens to be an accessibly complicated game.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell by the rule book. I mean, I open up a rule book, it's like 300 something pages, each one of those. Well, one is just stats, so do with that what you will, but there's a lot that goes into running a D&D game. But it's not a mountain. It's a hill that you can surmount. Now, there's a mountain above it, which led to the phenomenon. Now, another big thing that became the cultural phenomenon and is a web series, and it was called Critical Role, which I know you know.
Yes, I have opinions on Critical Role.
I think Critical Role is wonderful.
I totally believe that the Matt Mercer effect is a thing, and I hate it.
Well, I mean, we'll definitely talk about that. We can talk about that now. But explain what Critical Role is. It's a series run by voice actors, and the reason why it's so successful is it's professional voice actors. It's led by a guy named Matt Mercer, who I think is one of the best DMs. Period.
I hate him.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of him.
Ivan Van Norman could eat him for breakfast.
I think he's a wonderful DM, and I think he's a really good portrayer of characters. And part of the reason is on that show, everyone in there is a professional voice actor. They're an actor above all, and they understand the ideology is I want to make an entertaining show. He's a wonderful writer, and he does a really good job at doing it. And people saw Critical Role and they go, I really like the show Critical Role. These guys are really funny, and this is awesome. All these guys are being awesome. Can I do that too? And the answer is yes, you can. And this show gets like, well, we'll talk about that. But this show that's thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of views. And it's a very, very good show full of very, very talented voice actors who make the game very, very fun. Now they switched over to 5th edition from Pathfinder. Mm-hmm. And it led to a spike in the game. The fact where the campaign setting for Critical Role is getting an official D&D book. The characters from Critical Role have official D&D stats.
Yeah, on D&D Beyond, there's actually, like, in the character creation things, there's drop-down tabs for Critical Role content in your game. Like, just plugged right in.
Yeah, and what you mentioned was the Matt Mercer effect, which I find a very, very funny thing. Now, he's actually come out, if I believe, and said, like, I get paid to run this. I've been doing this for 20 years. I can prep for all my games. Because he does get paid to run D&D.
Yeah, lots of people do. I've been paid to run D&D.
Oh but this is gonna be. He makes enough to make it his full-time job. And what he said was, obviously, I'm putting my full-time work into it. I'm putting a full work into it. Of course, I have more props. Of course, I have more prep. I have more stats laid out. I have time to do this. Most DMs don't have time to prep for their game upon months, right? Or even spending a whole day to prep for a campaign is a luxury not every DM can afford. Mm-hmm. And when a GM can do that, awesome. They're a top tier DM. And I think Matt Mercer is a top tier DM. And because of that, but it also leads to people who want every DM to be Matt Mercer.
Yeah. And honestly, I bitch about Matt Mercer. I feel that he just gets a lot more credit than he necessarily deserves. Like, I think he's more of a right place at the right time kind of thing. And again, back to the Matt Mercer effect, it's not just the props in Matt Mercer himself. It's the fact that everybody in his crew are trained voice actors that know how to interact in a entertainment setting. Because that's really the thing, is Critical Role isn't really D&D. It's role-playing entertainment to a certain extent. It's more improv.
It is role-playing entertainment.
Yeah. It's so that's where my big gripe is, because like there's a lot of other like gaming streaming channels that I follow.
Like Modern Gods, come see us every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, run by yours truly.
That's a great segue for a plug there. But no, I'm also a really big of the Ox Ventures Guild. Johnny Chiodini is an excellent GM. Luke Westaway, who has been like learning from Johnny Chiodini. He's been running Blades in the Dark, and he's been doing a really good job. And again, I mentioned it before, Ivan Van Norman is my goddamn GM crush, and I adore him, and I adore all of the stuff his studio puts out. I feel that you can do everything Matt Mercer does. You can get that effect. You can get that atmosphere, that thick, crunchy, delicious atmosphere, and you don't need all that shit. Like, check out Ivan Van Norman's 10 Candles series, and check out fucking 10 Candles. It's a great fucking game. Which is another one of those, like, really high role play, low rules kind of games. And it's horror. Oh, God, is it horror. But anyway, it's just, my whole thing is I feel that the whole Critical Role thing has gotten so overblown, and it creates very unrealistic expectations. And
yes,
people don't necessarily understand that this isn't what D&D is. It can be this, but it's one teeny tiny sliver of this gigantic pie.
And to a point, I don't think it necessarily should be just Critical Role. Every GM that you play with, this is part of the joy of D&D, is going to have a different interpretation of how to play D&D. And you're playing that GM's D&D, and that's a great thing. That's a wonderful thing. This is why people say, I've had people tell me, I love your games. I've had people tell me, I hate your games. And
I was there for that. That was funny.
I remember, yeah. Well, I mean, I was told at a big game I was running that one player hated the way I run game, and it was because I like threw a lot of like darker themes in it, and this person didn't like that. And I was like, of course, you're not going to jive with every person. You can love this one person, you can hate this other person.
Oh, you're the one that throws in dark stuff, huh? Sorry, I just gave you the Willy Wonka lean there.
Listen, man, well, even knowing that, like, it wasn't even that. Well, it was dark. I run a lot of Lovecraft stuff. Mm-hmm. Lovecraftian horror is my bag, and I'll run a lot of Call of Cthulhu and stuff like that. Which one of my Trail of Cthulhu is one of my favorite games of all time. Mm. But this kind of aspect of game, that's the big thing. That's huge. Every GM is going to put their own spin on it. And 5th edition allows you to do that. Now, the issue is, you're right, people see Critical Role and they go, why aren't you that? Why don't you say, how do you want to do this every time you kill someone? And like, yeah, that's kind of his thing. Don't take his thing.
Yeah. It's almost like, and you know this too, it's a performer thing, man. You can do the act, just don't steal my freaking patter. Right?
So those of you who don't know, we're both performers. I'm a magician and he's a no talent hack.
I won't argue with that.
And part of it is we were joking during a show. You took one of my lines and I was in the audience being like, don't steal my line. And we stopped to be like, no, if like we weren't friends, that would actually be a big slap in the face to another performer.
Yeah, no, like this is one of those things, like whatever I'm checking out Mike's show or he's at mine, like we'll talk to each other afterwards. Like, dude, that was freaking funny. Can I use that? And it'll be like, yeah, sure, or no. At least let me get a season out of it, man.
No, and you get things like magicians are the same way. If you have another magician's trick, you go ask them, hey, can I use your trick? Like, I won't use the exact pattern. And sometimes they're just like, no problem, use the trick. I don't give a shit. And I go back to my alcohol. I'm a grizzled old magician. Some of them are like, no, and I'm sorry, but no, and that's, you respect it.
Yeah.
What Critical Role does do is it lets people cosplay Matt Mercer while they GM. Sometimes that helps them be a GM.
I don't know how, but you saying that, I'm going to make that come back to haunt you someday, Michael.
I have a friend of mine, and he will run.
You have friends?
I know, right? Shocking. And I remember I would sit down at his table, and I'm like a cursory fan of Critical Role. I've seen episodes here and there, but I know a lot of, like, I watch some highlights reel because I don't have time to watch the full episodes. But I'll like watch funny scenes, like, these are really funny. And in context, they're great. And there's some really heart-wrenching moments. I was like, wow, D&D, this entertainment show is phenomenal. And I remember he was like, he introduced a sword, and the sword is, and I'm like, where have I? It was the sword from Critical Role, like flat out, like the same stats, the same voice lines of like, I am the shadows that dwell within, and you're like, dude, come up with your own thing. Stop. But to new players, it's okay. My first campaign I ran, the opening mission was the human opening from World of Warcraft. I did verbatim, like there was the boars you had to kill, and you had to go into the abbey, and you had to fight the guard, and it was like the human opening from WoW. And I ran it verbatim.
There's nothing wrong with that, dude. Like, and I've said this before, like in some of the closing meetings for some of the big Modern Gods games, is I don't consider myself like a good GM or even a good writer. I'm a good quilter. I take bits and pieces of media and stuff that I enjoy, books, video games, movies, whatever, and I weave it into the game. And sometimes my players call me on it, like, wait a minute, is this the Warriors? Did we just listen to the Cyrus speech, man? Is he going to get shot? Oh, yeah, sorry. Oops.
Dang!
Or when I totally had like a whole fight scene from Metal Gear, but it was, evil Thomas Edison piloting a big walking tank.
And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact,
Oh,
it's okay to do.
yeah.
Quilting things together is totally fine, which is why I'm very pro. If you're a first-time GM and you watch Critical Role and you go, I kind of want to do some of the stuff he does, learning his mannerisms is not necessarily a bad thing. The culture that gets bad is when players expect you to be like him.
Yeah.
And that is the real hardship of it. Now, one thing they don't show in Critical Role, obviously, is like rules lawyers. They're all friends. You don't get the one guy being like shouting with the DM over his ability, or what do you mean you killed me? Or having a DM that is a killer DM. Because some DMs are, I exist to murder you, and I will murder you. I get power because I have a small penis, I think.
Now, I play that up whenever I'm playing with new people. I love to go in swinging that big fake GM dick of like, haha, I am the third most fatal GM on the East Coast. I've introduced myself like that for whatever reason. And I always
Who's
throw
number
around,
1 and 2?
that's a good question there. And I always throw around, I'm like, no, the best way to make your party take you seriously, first thing you do, kill one of them. Kill one of them in the first 10 minutes. That'll teach them. I never actually do any of these things. I always feel bad when I kill people. I don't very often. You mean in game, right, Jeff? You're talking about in game, right? Sure.
The way it's the prison yard mentality. First thing you gotta do is shiv the guy closest to you.
Shiv the paladin. Smite evil this. But yeah, no, that's I understand that there's GMs out there like that, but again, that goes back to what I'm saying is it's Critical Role and shows like that are generally entertainment because everybody goes in with the expectation of, no, you're on stage. We have 90 minutes to get you through an entire adventure, entertain this crowd, and still make it seem like you're playing D&D. So no rules lawyering. What the GM says goes. You act, you don't talk over each other, and you role play and you stay in character. Everybody understands? Yes, everybody understands.
And no one's doing this. No one's doing this.
Oh, yeah, you beat me to it. I was going to be like,
Is it my turn? I attack. Cool. I do 18 damage. Go back to my phone, please.
Wait, hold on. Wait, hold on. I got to cast a spell. Let me look it up.
That's fine. That's fine.
When it comes to their turn and it takes them 10 minutes, that's not fine, Mike.
No. I'm talking about people who are like doing something else entirely and it's like, I am doing things on my phone, and you're like, I'm sorry, I'm boring you.
Well, no, with that, it's not. I'm not saying they're not doing so. English. Do you speak it? No, what I'm saying is
say what again? Say what again?
They get to their turn, and rather than while other people are going, they're looking up the spell that they're going to cast. It's my turn. I'm going to cast the spell. I'm going to look it up now. That's a bit insulting.
Well, there is certain things like different cultures of D&D games run differently. For example, I remember there was a D&D group I played with who was expedient. They were like combat. We're handling things tactically, and you're sitting with a bunch of tactical gamers going, here's what we do next. You go this now. We're going to do this now. You hit here. And they would roll. This is brilliant. They would roll their damage dice
in advance
with their hit dice.
Yep.
And when they say hit, they go, cool, 16. Wow! Sped up combat so fast. Up. Now, other people savor the moment of roll. Oh, I hit? Cool. Oh, that's 21. And some people love that.
Yeah,
and for some groups, it works.
Yeah, it's all different types of mentality. And again, there seems to be, like, with the cultural explosion of 5e, there seems to be so many more flavors that are reaching the table. And that's cool. Like, the thing that's really cool is, like, with the accessibility of it, there's been people on my social media feeds that, like, apparently have always wanted to play D&D and never felt welcome, either never felt welcome at the table or felt it was too complicated for them, and now they're getting into it. Like, I have a friend that she had never even touched a role-playing game, and midway through the pandemic she's now like streaming her games on Twitch and people love them. And she had never even bothered with role-playing games like more than, like a year and a half ago. And that's really cool that people are able to get into it on that level. And again, with that, it brings in so many weird and different mentalities. I got into an
Yes, it
argument
does.
with a very old school gamer that I'm good friends with, and like, he's been gaming since the 70s. And it was specifically about the new Ravenloft setting that's coming out, because they're actually expanding and making the whole, like, the realms of Ravenloft for 5e, which I'm totally excited. Van Richten's Guide to the Mist coming out, or Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft coming out in May. Oh my
Not
god, I can taste it.
not sponsored. Except by Modern Gods. Join us every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a Twitch game about gods living in modern times, hosted by yours truly.
That's right, milk that. But no, his whole thing is like, oh, why does it say you could play your Ravenloft game like Scooby-Doo and the gang? That's totally disrespectful to how Ravenloft is supposed to be. And 10 years ago I would have agreed with him. But you know what? If playing your Ravenloft game like a goofy Scooby-Doo mystery, if that gets people to enjoy the game, that's the point. That's the whole freaking point.
Well, that goes into the gatekeeping of the old generation of, oh, you're not a real gamer until you've run that code. I've been here for quite some time.
I was born with a 10-foot pole in my hand, and Mordenkainen's watchdog shoved up my ass.
Well, and it's the old generation that kind of kicks these guys out. Like, you get these like hostile gamers, or you would get people who are like, I only play top tier, and they'll make fun of new players, and they'll say like, what do you mean you don't know this? You're ruining my time. And it would be these moments of, I played with aggressive DMs before who were like super like, I kill you, and like things like awful situations. And fifth edition is really working their ass off to fix that.
Mhm.
And that's the plus. It also made it so the adventures you can get, like they had an adventure, you of course know The Curse of Strahd,
Mhm.
is like the most acclaimed adventure in 5th edition. People love it. My friend Steve was playing it, and he was like, I'm playing through this. We were playing The Fury of Dracula, the game about hunting Dracula. I was playing as Van Helsing, and he was like, Van Richten, you're next. I'm like, that's not who I'm the original guy. That's the and it was just so ingrained with him, and he's never played Ravenloft before, and he's gotten like a really like good kick for it because it made all these settings accessible. Eberron they made accessible. I think Eberron's always been accessible, but 5th edition really made it accessible.
Mhm. And again, the accessibility, that's what's bringing in. That's why it's so high selling. Everybody can get into it. Come and join the party. It's not just for nerds. Sheldon Cooper can go suck a dick in an alley somewhere.
But there are some things about 5th edition I don't like. And
obviously.
The biggest one I don't like is
Skills?
I find the game too simple. And skills. And it goes down really to skills. Skills are there was a reason in the other editions to like put points to intelligence. There was a reason in the other games to have skills. You can't get better at a certain skill at all. If I want to learn animal handling midway through a campaign, I can't.
That's literally my argument. I don't know if we argued this on the podcast or if this was just a conversation you and I had. Like, yeah, I have a Tabaxi Rogue in my Friday night game, and I'm trying to rear a baby griffin because I love griffins. And no matter what I do, there's nothing I can do apart from taking ability score increases instead of taking feats every couple of levels. There's nothing I can do to raise my animal handling score. There's nothing I can do to get better at this thing that I'm doing as an in-character role-playing thing, and it's irritating. I really, that's my big gripe with 5e is the fact that you lose a bit of the customization as far as skills go. There's not as much freedom. Like, maybe I want to have a fighter with a high bluff score, man. Like, maybe
Well, you can with backgrounds. but you can't do it by the base rules. And
Yeah.
like you can't like 5 levels in, I can't like choose where to put my levels because everything's this proficiency modifier.
Mm-hmm. And it gets irritating, and it feels moderately stifling from time to time.
It really does. Advantage disadvantage is also a huge issue I have. Now advantage disadvantage. Now advantage disadvantage, when it comes down to it, the mathematics of it is a +5, +5 -5. That is the mathematics of rolling 2 dice and keeping the lowest, or rolling 2 dice and keeping the highest. It works out to +5 -5. That is what that number is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, understanding that gives you a lot more data on advantage disadvantage. Now, I like advantage disadvantage. I would have liked some extra numbers in there, like I can get a +1, I can get a +2. Hey, look at the Tabaxi's back.
Say hi, Cap.
But that was a huge difference, right? I don't like the fact that I have the game and I go, well, I can only do advantage disadvantage. As a GM, it feels super limiting. I also feel there's some abilities in 5th edition where you go, okay, well, that was supposed to be an adventure, but you can just kind of do that now.
Mm-hmm.
Or some classes just being very off curve. Ranger. But that's always going to happen. If I want to play a Ranger, I'm going to have fun playing Ranger. I'm just going to play it.
Yeah. I've played Rangers before and enjoyed it, but I mean, that's just because I enjoy playing D&D and I've made a character I want to play. If you're looking at it from strictly numbers crunching standpoints, there's always an odd man out class or 3.
Well, the other thing about 5th edition that I'm not a huge fan of is part of the community of like, we've discovered the best build. And you're just like, yeah, no crap you did. It's not hard to figure out that mathematics. It's this class is better than this class. This subclass is better than this subclass. There's not a lot of data we're looking at, but what people do is they pull up the top builds and they go, I've built the top build. Now, to 5th edition's credit, it doesn't matter all that much. Cool, you have a top build. Whatever, dude. Do your own thing. Rock and roll with your cool subclass combination. Because everyone wants to play, I want to be a warlock sorcerer who does warlock sorcerer things. And that's like the busted build, and everyone in my games tries to justify it. I had a guy justify Hexblade Paladin, which was weird. But things just kind of happen. But 5th edition did a really good job at balancing that against the game. So I'll give that a point to 5th edition.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I don't like about 5th in general is how restricting it feels sometimes. Because every game of 5th edition feels the same to me. And I played a lot of 5th edition. I ran 5th edition for money for a while. Every game felt the exact same. I'd be like, all right, there's a fighter, a barbarian, and this. I don't care what subclasses you were always the fighter, the barbarian, and the cleric. And it got a little bit boring that I wasn't seeing new things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just because I played a lot of 5th edition. But that was definitely a gripe I personally had with the system. Now, what are your thoughts on it?
Like, again, as I was saying before, my biggest gripe comes from the skill selection. And it definitely does feel like you've lost out on a lot of customization. I mean, the character builds and the subclasses and everything, it definitely gives everything a lot of flavor to it, which I really, really appreciate. All in all, is it my favorite system? No, but is it a really, really good system? Yes, and it's definitely a simple system. And simple systems really seem to be the vogue right now. Now, D&D is a complicated, simple system. Like 5e is a complicated, simple system. It's not lasers and feelings. It's not anything from the Powered by the Apocalypse family, which includes Modern Gods.
Every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, visit us on Twitch.
But yeah, all in all, like, I don't really have, like, I've been playing 5th edition for about a year, and I was very hesitant on it because I'm one of those people. I don't like new things. It's new. It's scary. I have 3 bookshelves full of 3.5 books. I don't want to convert. But, you know, and also with the advent of everything on D&D Beyond. D&D Beyond makes stuff so simple. It is probably the best character builder I've ever dealt with.
Oh, yes, it is.
And it's made leveling so simple. Like, I honestly, if I had to pen and paper 5e, I've become so reliant on D&D Beyond, I might not be able to pen and paper 5e, to be brutally honest, because I don't physically own any of the books. I don't physically own, like, anything 5e. I just have a D&D Beyond account and a GM that has, like, the Xanathar's Guide and, like, the core rulebooks. But, I mean, again, it's a good solid, you know, workhorse of a system. No, that's not what I'm looking for. No frills, maybe. I
Yeah,
don't
sure.
know.
Yeah, no, sure. And I think another thing, going back to the classes, is everything's recognizable.
Yeah.
Right? You have someone play Shadowrun, you're like, do you want to play a Decker? Do you want to play a Shaman? Or do you want to play a Rigger? And they go, what are those? Do you
Well,
somebody...
you see, a rigger operates vehicles, whereas
right, but you have to explain that. I go to you like, do you want to be a wizard or a rogue? They go, I know what those things are. I play video games. Yeah. I want to be the rogue. Like, cool. They're recognizable and they feel like what they are. Right? You're playing a warlock, you feel like a warlock. You're playing a sorcerer, you feel like a sorcerer. And they did a really good job balancing it, making each class feel unique. And that is a big plus for D&D 5th edition. Now we have about 10 minutes left. We can actually talk about the more simple systems real quick, like PBTA and stuff like that.
Yeah, I am a big fan, and I have you to thank for this. I'm a really big fan of the Powered by the Apocalypse systems.
The system is, if you guys don't know, you roll 2d6 and you add a number to it. Did you roll less than a 7? Cool. The GM does something bad to you. Did you roll a 7 through 9? You succeed. There's a complication. Did you roll a 10? You generally succeed. That's an oversimplification, but it's an oversimplified system. Continue your thought. You were saying.
Yep. Sorry, the cats, they are being feral tonight.
Tabaxi.
But yeah, the Powered by the Apocalypse system is absolutely fantastic. Because it's such a super simple thing. Like you were saying, it's 2d6, add whatever your relevant modifier is, and that's literally it. I mean, the different classes, whatever it is you're playing, you'll have what's called a playbook depending on the system, and it will just have like, these are the things that you can do, which is almost kind of 4th edition-y, but it doesn't have all of the ridiculous additional math.
Very simple and very straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
And the game was invented by a game called Apocalypse World, which is like, here's a game. And the guy just made an open gaming license. He said, you can just use my system. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Apocalypse World, to be honest with you. I think it was like what it wanted to be, which is like edgy. Like there was powers like, when you have sex with another character, do this. And you're just like, cool. What? And then the people were like, hang on, the system he invented is actually really, really street. Can we take this? And they did. And they made, first game I played was a game called Monster of the Week, which basically the idea of the simplified system, like Fate Core, I think is one of the first simplified systems, is let's take this rule book and we say, why are we playing a role-playing game? To tell a story. So Fate Core was like, you rolled pluses and minuses to add to your stat. PBTA took a thing out of the ball and said, hey, GMs fudge rolls all the time. What if we stop pretending they don't? The GM never rolls. He decides what happens.
Yeah. I've actually, like, in some of my smaller games that I run, that's kind of what I've been doing just for any system at this point. And it makes the players feel like they have a little bit more agency and like they can actually affect things, so long as the GM is fair in his education.
As long as people trust the GM. And now if you don't trust the GM, it is the worst thing to play with a GM, because you know you cannot win. But if you have a good GM, then you're able to play these narrative-heavy games and focus on that.
But yeah, the Powered by the Apocalypse system, they've birthed so many other sub-games. Like, you got me into Monster of the Week. I now have a hard copy of Monster of the Week over there. But I've also picked up Spirit of 77, which is all about, like, 70s, like, action and sci-fi based off of, like, The Warriors and The $6 Million Man and Dukes of Hazzard and, and, like, Starsky and Hutch and stuff like that. And that's an aesthetic I really dig on. I've recently picked up Kids on Bikes.
I wasn't there in the 70s.
Neither was I. Which apparently some of our viewers, you know who I'm talking about, Kim. Some of our viewers, won't necessarily believe. But anyway, she's in the chat making fun of me for being old.
You are old.
Shut up, Michael. But yeah, I've also recently picked up Kids on Bikes, which is derivative of Powered by the Apocalypse. It's really cool.
It's Stranger Things.
Yeah, it's Stranger Things, or it's Goonies, or you.
Which is what Stranger Things was supposed to be.
Shut up. Or it could be Monster Squad. Monster Squad. Now that's some 80s cheese right there. But anyway, it's based on that sort of aesthetic of a game. However, all of the different character stats are broken down by, if you're good at something, you roll the d20. If you're bad at something, you roll a d4, and you assign what die goes with which stat.
And it gives you that little bit extra agency where you get it. I played in a game recently run by my friend Evan, and Evan ran a game as I think it was one of those one-page RPGs, and it was like you pick 3 things that you're good at and 3 things you're bad at. Okay.
Yep.
So it was like, I'm good at these 3 things, I'm bad at these 3 things. And here's the kicker: everyone else is neutral at all the things you're bad at. So if I picked like good at shooting, no one else can be good at shooting. And I picked bad at running, everyone else is neutral at running.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it worked. It was so clever. And like I had splunking as one of mine, and he was like, "Oh, you gotta roll splunking." And like the GM finds a way to do it, and you're just like, "Oh boy, my good stat."
Hey, that's a sign of a good GM, man. If they find a way to work in your weird skills, that's a really good thing right there. But
yeah,
one of the other things, I mentioned it before, and this is another one that I really want to. I think once things are a little bit safer and we can get a group together of everyone that's had their vaccine shot, I really want to run a game of 10 Candles for this. 10 Candles is a game that I utterly fell in love with about a year and a half ago. And again, Ivan Van Norman, my GM crush, runs a mean game of it. Now, the concept of 10 Candles is, for some reason, the sun has disappeared. It's meant to be played by the light of, get this, 10 candles. And all of the players' actions rely off of a single D6 dice pool. Everybody shares the same dice pool. Whenever a roll is failed, a candle gets darkened and you lose one of those dies permanently. You go into the game knowing that no matter what, this is going to have a bad ending. You will die. You will probably die horribly and a very depressing and sad manner. These are the things I like in games. Sorry. But it's just, it makes for such an intriguing and robust role play experience, especially going in with that fatalistic view of you're not making it out of here alive. And that sort of breaks the mentality and kind of gets people away from a lot of weird, like, dug in like role-playing habits of I have to keep my character alive. It kind of by losing hope, it kind of gives you hope. I don't know exactly if I'm exactly phrasing that right, but it makes for such an interesting and intriguing role-play experience. And I just utterly love it because I love doom and gloom.
and
then
these are
there's
games that have a narrative component to them.
Yeah. Well, the whole point is 10 Candles is meant to be a collective RPG experience. It's a group RPG experience. When the rolls are failed, you create truths, which is you go around the table and every character gets to come up with, this is now a truth in this world. That dude pointing a gun at me, that gun isn't loaded. There's a monster in that hallway that we don't know about yet.
And what's cool about 10 Candles is players screw themselves over all the time.
Yes.
Like, I discovered I am not a good 10 Candles player. I played 10 Candles with you, and I am not a good 10 Candles player. I was like fighting against the system.
And that's fine.
I think I'm a good 10 Candles GM. I would have a great time GMing the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like hopelessness in my RPGs. I think hopelessness is the opposite of why I play games. I like overcoming bleakness. And I think the fact I can't overcome bleakness, no matter how clever I am, I don't like. It's why I don't like movies that end with everyone dying.
And yet you run Call of Cthulhu.
I know I'm good at telling these stories, but
mm-hmm.
I don't like playing Call of Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm.
I would very rarely actually play Call of Cthulhu. When I do, I usually become like a cultist. And I'm like, praise be to the dark ones! Spells! I was playing Cthulhu LARP at one point, where 65 players walk in, you get 1 life. We're gonna try to wipe the player base out by the end of it. I was PCing it. I survived. I became like a cultist, and it was great, and I had a great time.
Great. I joined a cult. It was great.
Oh, then I'm like, I killed the cult, and I was like, hope for the future! And that was kind of how I ended the game. But those are the kind of games I enjoy, and I think that is just a difference in what we like in our role-playing games. 5e overall, is a system that got a lot of people into all role-playing games. The fact that these new games are spiking is because of 5e. If you go on Kickstarter right now and you type in role-playing game, 9 of them are going to be 5e games. We've invented a thing for 5e.
9 of them are going to be 5e games, and in a couple of months, the 10th one is going to be Modern Gods.
Join us at Twitch at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Sunday.
But real quick, I just wanted to throw in like one more, like
2
even
p.m.
further. Huh?
It's at 10 p.m., 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Sunday.
But yeah, one more system I want to throw in, like
Sure.
as we're crunching down the last couple of minutes. Another game that I recently picked up, Icarus. Icarus is a really fun RPG because Icarus is a GM-less RPG. It's all meant to be a collaborative storytelling effort where you and whoever else is playing with you, you are telling the story of a great civilization that falls, like Fable of Icarus. Or it's not a civilization, it's a dude with wings. Anyway, I'm sure you know the myth. You're watching a freaking role-playing podcast.
His dad's name is Daedalus.
Oh, man.
He made the Minotaur.
But yeah, with Icarus, it's you go around the table and you decide basic tenets of what is good about the city. You ask a bunch of questions that are put forth on a bunch of cards, and then eventually, once you get the basics down, the game begins, and you go around the table and you draw cards, and the cards will say like, a great famine has reached the city of Icarus. What is its source, and who is blamed for it? And whoever draws the card comes up with the answer for it. And then the next person.
Do you pick one of you to be the person who's blamed for it?
No. It's basically what it is you draw the card and then you decide, you write it down on a piece of paper and you put it on the table. But one of the other.
Are you all like leaders of the city? Is that kind of how it works? Okay.
Yes, you create midway through the game, you create a persona that is effectively your character. That is somebody that you are, that you know, that represents you and your will in the city.
So I could be like the religious minister.
Yes. If you draw the religion card, because there's, I believe, like 6 tenets. It's like agriculture, law, religion, medicine.
If I'm playing, there's going to be a religion card. I'll deal.
But yeah, and what you can also do is during your turn, you can put a die on one of the pieces of paper on the table and say, yes, my character wants to try and do something about this. There's famine. I'm the minister of agriculture. I want to try and come up with a new type of crop that will feed everybody. And you'll roll the die, and depending on the die roll, either it goes well or it goes poorly. And then regardless, the die goes on a stack of dice in the center of the table. Or sorry, if the die fails, it goes on a stack of dice in the center of the table that slowly builds a tower. And the tower of dice works as a time mechanic, whereas eventually there's too many dice and it goes over, and that's when the game ends.
What I'm thinking we do is before we play a Ravenloft, we'll play a game of Icarus and record it so we can release the 2 videos.
Sure.
Yeah,
I love Icarus, dude.
Let's do that. But anyway, I think we are out of time for today. It became 5th edition and other systems today, but the history of 5th edition is really short. Point is, the cultural piece is there. Next week, we have 2 guests coming on who are in they're releasing a new role-playing game that I'm helping work on. They're from a group called Apotheosis Studios. Their names are Satine and Jameson. They've done work for like Geek and Sundry, and we're going to have them as guests next week, so that's going to be phenomenal.
They work with Geek and Sundry?
Yeah.
They've worked with Ivan Van Norman. I love them now. These are the coolest people ever. Best guests in the world.
If you look up Satine Phoenix, she has like she was on a bunch of GM tips. I think she ran GM tips for a while. And
I'm probably going to go through like my YouTube search history in a little bit and find out, like, I've been watching videos of her for months and didn't.
That's probably what's going to happen. But she's going to be hanging out with us for some reason next week. She and Jameson, and they are going to be working together on the new project, and they're going to be talking about it with us, and we'll also be able to get their input as people who are in the cultural phenomenon of D&D. But anyway, as always, I've been Michael OJ.
I'm Dr. J.R. Whitcomb.
And if you like the show, and if you didn't like the show, this has been
a totally different podcast.
Thank you guys for watching. Goodbye.
Good night.